Hello, ICICLE friends. It's Shubhi Sinha again with Indiana University. I'm back with our final video in the ICICLE Ethics Tip series. So, you've surely seen this before. Democratizing AI is a tagline of ICICLE, and it's also a goal. Today, we're going to talk about what it actually means. So, let's do it. Let's dive right in and talk about what it means to democratize AI. Here is the Webster's Dictionary definition. It says, to democratize is to make something accessible to or available for everyone, and to make something more democratic. In ICICLE, that something is artificial intelligence. We think about democratizing through the lens of democratizing AI technologies. This is democratizing access and development of technologies with downstream benefits squarely front and center. There are 4 ways to democratize. In ICICLE, all 4 are relevant. Democratizing use means that effort is made to make AI tools more accessible and usable to a wider range of users. Democratization applies to the development of AI as well. Users should actively participate in the design and development of AI tools. Effort can be paid to democratizing the benefits of AI. The future benefits are known and deployed in a way that does not harm users or create greater disparity. And finally, governance of resources can be democratized as well. Who controls the software and tools? This group needs representation that includes diverse and conflicting beliefs and values. Innovation in science has unknowns that can manifest in products with unintended harms. University scientists, industry, and policy institutions all assume that GMOs would be accepted as an unquestioned benefit so long as they pose no appreciable risk to health and safety, but instead brought vast change to the livelihoods of traditional farmers across the developing world. Small farmers in India had previously paid little or nothing for their seeds. They were now forced to buy expensive packages of seeds, pesticides, and fertilizers, cutting into their potential profit margins and leaving them vulnerable to bad harvests and growing debt. What this tells us is that all 4 types of AI democratization are necessary to achieve our end goals. As always, we'll next provide some tips to help us achieve the goals of democratizing AI and ICICLE. Here you go. Here are our tips for democratizing AI. The first tip is to engage end users as true participants in the design and development of AI tools. Tip number 2 is to use broader access as a metric by which the project's success is measured. Third, if you don't see diversity and inclusion in your teams, say something. And finally, be a leader on AI ethics, and you'll automatically be a leader on AI democratization as well. As we build a model of CI for AI that is centered on ethics, we've now filled in the last bit which strives towards democratization of AI use, AI benefit, AI development, and AI governance. So, let's recap. So here is a summary of the tips for ethical design in ICICLE. It includes both the development of habits of mind and concrete practices. The first tips have to do with our role as members of a workforce developing AI and CI for other uses. Tip number 1 is to recognize that AI is not inevitable. It is created and shaped by people, by resources, and by the conventions of scientific and social practice. And tip number 2 is to recognize that our responsibility is to the positive outcomes of our work. With regard to privacy, tip number 3 is to be transparent and thorough in documentation about ownership, data retention and availability, portability, and the like. Tip number 4 is to always specify what is sensitive and what is not sensitive. Tip number 5 is to consult your university's data officer before sharing data. And tip number 6 is, when appropriate, employ privacy-preserving techniques and privacy-enhancing technologies along with the other privacy-preserving tips. With regards to accountability, tip number 7 is to determine the reporting requirements for having a trail of accountability and implement them. Tip number 8 is to establish a place for ethics on your project's leadership team. And within project teams, everyone should do their part to follow the accountability requirements. That leads to tip number 9, which is to actually be accountable. Act like there's a cost to your work, even if no one is keeping score. Tips 10 through 12 have to do with fairness. Tip number 10 is to involve the communities impacted by the systems in the development of the systems. Use democratic ideals to identify communities impacted and facilitate engagement and feedback. Tip number 11 is to ensure that stakeholders with less power and resources are not further marginalized by AI or CI for AI. And tip number 12 is to not get boxed into the one trade-off paradigm. Boxing yourself into one paradigm can blind you to inequalities. Thinking broadly about stakeholders can help you see the impact of your work on human, non-human, and environmental welfare. Tips to encourage trust and realize trustworthiness include finding ways to bring users' needs into development and developing a habit of annotating model cards as thoroughly as possible. Doing so will require commitment, so allocate time and resources to annotate and document choices and practices. And finally, democratizing AI, which is an aspiration of ICICLE, has at least 4 components that we want to address. Tips for doing so include tip number 15, which is to engage in projects and use cases that use AI to spread its benefits to those who wouldn't have access otherwise. Tip number 16 is to make AI tools easy to use and accessible without sacrificing the complexities of contextual uses by individuals. And tip number 17 is to advocate for diversity and inclusion on your teams. Alright, iCyclists, those are the pieces in the How Do We Do Ethical Design in ICICLE puzzle. Keep these tips in mind and return to the previous videos for more details. Also, don't forget the tips on allyship as well. Watch them here on our ICICLE YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.